The Jews were qualified by the unspeakable sufferings of ages to be the leaders, he wrote, not in politics, but in religion. Now, when he says he, this is a man here. Hold on for a second. His name is, he's a Pan-African intellectual, Edward Wilmot Blyden. Okay. They said he's like one of the early forerunners of the whole Black Hebrew Israelite movement, so to speak. So this is what he said. He says, the Jews were qualified by the unspeakable suffering of ages to be the leaders, he wrote, not in politics, but in religion, and best suited at propagating the international religion by which persons of all races, climes, and countries could call upon the one Lord, advocating a kinship between blacks and Jews. Blyden went so far as to suggest that Africa might be a productive site for both to begin the higher and nobler work of the uplift of humankind to which both peoples had been called. So right from the beginning, again, this is the foundation. This man saw that Jewish people and American blacks, we needed to work together and build something in Africa. Okay. And we need to be all under one religion. What was that religion? It's Judaism. Judaism. I want you to pay attention to this. Many of the early black Jewish groups encouraged their followers to make a conscious break with certain aspects of their heritage while retaining others. Name transformation or the rejection of the terms Negro and black in favor of Hebrew was one strategy by which some blacks signified Judaism as a racial classification. The reason why these people did it is because they wanted to disconnect themselves from their own people. See, I'm always connected to my people at the end of the day, whether they call themselves Hebrew or not. I'm still connected to them. I never go somewhere and I see other people that look like me and I'm like, huh, you ain't Hebrew. You ain't like me. I'm never like that. If anything, I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? If I know them, of course, we be, but for the most part, yeah, they're my people. But where did that begin? The name thing, where did it begin? It began here as a way of disconnecting yourself from your own people. That's a prelude to a cult. Let's see, name transformation or the rejection of the terms Negro and black in favor of Hebrew was one strategy by which some blacks signified Judaism. So that came out of Judaism. That was a way for them to disconnect themselves from their people and to acknowledge that they were under Judaism as a racial classification. African Americans who identified as Jews defined themselves not only in opposition to whites, but against other blacks, especially black Christians. Hold up for a second. You mean to tell me I'm supposed to be against other blacks? But they did this not just to be against whites. The motivation wasn't, but it was also as a way to be against other blacks, and especially black Christians. Wait a minute now.
The difference between Hamites and Shemites. So a lot of people were coming on there with comments saying that I'm trying to divide the black man and this and that, trying to hang on to this Hamite understanding. Yeah, so the bottom line of it was, in that video it was detailing, I'm going to show where I got that information from, showing the difference between a Hamite and a Shemite. Hamites being Africans, spear chucking, bone in the nose, whatever you want to say. Not Shemites, they're not Israelites. They can't grow the facial hair, the beards, the goatees, the dreads, the afros, etc., which identifies and shows that we're different than the Hamite.
And when we were growing up, actually, we also thought that we were African. But the Africans are actually a different bloodline from us. They are Hamitic and descend from Ham, and we are Shemitic and descend from Shem. So you've got two dark-skinned nations, but two different bloodlines.
This was a book outside, beyond the Bible, right next to the Bible. I would say this particular book here was one that was highly recommended. They said, if you want to know who you are, this is the book that you need to get, right? So not only did I have the book, I had the audio book, so I wanted to be covered on both sides. And so this book here is by an author. His name is Rudolph R. Windsor. So we're going to learn just a little bit about him, okay? And we're just going to start like anybody. When you get a book, what's the first thing you do? You get the book in your hands, right? You open it up to page 1. Well, that's all we're going to do. It's going to be very simple. Nobody's saying that there's pure perfection coming from anybody. Nobody's holding him or anybody else to some high level of perfection. I said, sis, let's put the churchisms away and let's let the man's work speak for itself. But one of the things, in the Hebrew space that is enforced and reinforced over and over and over again is what? Is that you are the real people. And there's fake ones out there. The algorithm is listening. So, I got to talk in, spotty here, but you guys know what I'm talking about. You got, the Genesis 2:9 and Revelations 2:9 and Revelations 3:9. You got some people, you got the other people out here. They're not the real ones, but you are the real ones. You're the ones. But those people out there, they do lie. They're liars, and we cannot trust them. They are nothing but a bunch of liars, right? Have you heard that, right? You've heard that, right? You get that, right? All right. So that's what's been exposed. That's what we have been inundated, and we inundate ourselves with it. This is his biography. This is Mr. Windsor's biography. So we're going to read it as is. I ain't adding nothing. Okay. So let's take a look here. Rudolph Windsor was born in Long Beach, New Jersey. Long Branch, sorry. I'm in New Jersey. How did I say Long Beach? Well, there is a Long Island Beach. Okay, Long Branch, New Jersey. After living in a number of Jersey communities, his family settled in Philadelphia, where he attended community college, studying psychology and political science. Gratz College, we're going to get to that in a moment, where he majored in Hebrew/Aramaic studies, and Temple University. So this is all undergrad here that he's talking about right now, okay? Where he majored in Middle Eastern studies. In addition, he had 4 sons and a daughter. He says of his book, my motive in writing it was to give the true history of the Afro-American. That's, when you say Afro-American, you know what that era that was. Anyway, which has been excluded from textbooks. Professor Windsor is a strong advocate of the economic and cultural development of the Black community. In serving the community, he has been a member and president of several organizations, was a delegate to the Black Power Conference of 1968, and was designated a delegate on behalf of Ethiopian Jews to meet with Mr. Conan, an official of the Ethiopian mission to the United Nations in the early 1970s. Moreover, Mr. Windsor is the author of the book, The Valley of the Dry Bones, subtitled The Conditions That Face Black People in America. As a result of some difficulties with several book companies, Mr. Windsor established his own company called Windsor's Golden Series Publications. In 1988, Mr. Windsor redesigned his first book, From Babylon to Timbuktu. Again, Mr. Windsor, over the years, has appeared on radio, TV, talk shows, lectured in congregations and organizations, universities, and has traveled to Europe and the Middle East. All right, so let's take a look here. All right, so take a look here. And it says here, the author wished to thank the Jewish people for their great effort. When he's saying the Jewish people now, it's those Jewish people, right? The ones that you know about, right? The Jewish people for their great effort in assisting the Ethiopian Jews. If you would like to help, write to American Association for Ethiopian Jews, and it gives the address there. All right. So here you go. Now he has these articles here of Jewish people, right, that were, I guess they were helping out with the Ethiopian Jews, right? Helping them in their plight during that day. We're going to get to this next page here, all right? And let's read it. This book is intended as a supplement to existing literature on African and Black Hebrew history. To get the background knowledge of the history of the Black races, the reader is urged to start at the beginning and continue to the end. The aim is to present material that will not only inform and interest the reader, but will impart truth, self-confidence, and racial pride to the Black man, and at the same time enlighten the general public concerning the contributions to civilization of the ancient Black races. In general, I have tried to follow a chronological approach in this book, but it has been difficult to maintain 100% consistency. Certain subjects are to some extent repeated because I have elsewhere dealt with another phase of the same material. In many cases, a refresher is provided in order to bring the reader up to date. I have consulted. Now, this is the part I want you to pay attention to. All right. Remember what I was just saying, all of that, we're the people. They're not the people, right? They're not the people. Because again, what we're told is that they're the liars and we're the ones that know the truth. Okay. All right. So this is what he says. I have consulted many scholars in the compilation of this work. And he goes through the names. He says Basil Davison is an authority on African history. Moreover, Allen H. Godby and Joseph Williams are excellent scholars on the Black Hebrews, but I have not hesitated to differ from them in some instances. It behooves me to express my debt to the faculty of Gratz College, who taught me much and helped me make this book possible. Among these are such distinguished scholars as Dr. Eleazar Goldman, he's the dean, Daniel Isaacman, he's the registrar, Dr. William Chomsky, Dr. Samuel Pitlick, Dr. Samuel Curlin, Dr. Sidney M. Fish, Dr. Ezra, I'll just say that, Dr. Samuel T. Lex, Abraham Marthin, Rabbi Shlomo Balter, and Rabbi Shlomo Margalit. I also want to express my gratitude to my family, uncles, and friends who gave me much encouragement. Okay, here we go. So Gratz College. All right, what is Gratz College? Let's take a look here and learn a little bit about Gratz College. Maybe you can read it. All right, it says here, founded in 1895, Gratz is the oldest independent and pluralistic college for Jewish studies in North America. From its inception, Gratz holds the distinction of being the first institution of advanced Jewish learning to accept women on par with men. Addressing evolving needs, Gratz College grew to offer training programs for educators and communal professionals in the Jewish and secular communities. Over the last 20 years, the college has expanded to its offerings to include a broad array of credentials and programs, including PhD and EDD. Master's levels programs, a BA and it goes on there. blah, blah, blah. Gratz College is accredited by the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, recognized by the Ministry of Education and Culture of the State of Israel. So this school is an extension of Israel, the State of Israel, and is a partner of the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. The institution is guided with transparency by its board of governors. Okay, it sounds like what a school should do, right? Especially, this is more of a specialized school. Think of HBCU, for black folks. Well, you got one for Jews. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think, it should be paramount for you to educate your own people. So I emphasize that it should be paramount for you to educate your own people. So if these people are the fake people, you know where I'm going. Then why are you going to them to get educated? I say that again. If these people you are claiming and stating with your full chest that these people are the fake people, then why are you going to these people to get the history of your people? Why are you going to them? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, he has a whole section here. It behooves me to express my debt to the faculty of Gratz College, who taught me much and to help me make, who taught me much and help make this book possible. So the book would not be possible if it wasn't for the people that many of y'all say are fake. See, I gotta take my time with this. So the very book that has been highly recommended by Hebrew Israelites is saying that if you want to know your identity as a black person, you need to get this book. Okay, get the book. I'm looking at the first few pages of it. The man himself is saying that the book itself, if it wasn't for the faculty, the staff of the people at Gratz College or University, the book would not be possible. So that means much of the content that I and you are going to read when you're going through this book is going to come from the very people that many of you say are fake. See, that's what these long pauses is giving you time and opportunity to process this, okay? Now, tonight is not going to be the night to practice your moonwalking. What I mean by that, because I know there's going to be some people, well, brother, I kind of heard about that book, but I never really read it. I never really put a lot of stock in that book anyway. And No. Let's not. No. Because they're going to have some people you watch. All of a sudden, they're going to be doing their moonwalking real quick now. And they say, well, because a lot of our people, unfortunately, don't even bother to read. They don't. They will not read it. They'll get the book and say, I got the book. And they'll quote one page out of this book. And I think if I remember the page, I'm going to get to the page in a moment. But he is saying here in this beginning part that the book itself would not be possible if it wasn't for the very people that many of you say are the fake people. So I'm now a little bit confused here. If they're fake, then why are you going to them to get educated? Let me say that again, because some people it's still going over your head. If these people are fake, then why are you going to them to get educated? Why? Why are you going to them? Why? Why are you saying the same words that they say? They say mishpachah, you say mishpachah. They say Khan, you say Khan. They say shalom, you say shalom. And it's like when you ask, okay, anybody in your own family used to say those words? Well, no, nobody did. But I'm finding out the truth about who we are now. If you want to know the truth of who you are, you start in your house. You don't learn it on internet. So I'm sitting up here, and this should cause them wheels in your head to start spinning a little bit. I don't understand this. How can you say that these are the fake people, but the very book that many people have held up and said, this is the book. If you want to know who you are, this is the book to go to. The author himself is saying the book wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for these people that many of you say are the fake ones. They're not the real ones. How is that even possible? You can't talk around this. You can't duck and dive around this. You can't You can't say, well, what other things you're going to, well, we know in part and I hear it all. People trying to moonwalk right now. You ain't going to be able to moonwalk around any of this stuff. You cannot moonwalk around any of this stuff. So they're telling you right in your face where the source came from. You want your source information? There's your source information. Much of what he learned came from them. Now, if they are the fake people or they're liars and they're this and that or whatever, let me ask you this. If that's true, if that is true, I got to watch my words around here, but if that is true, do you actually believe that these people would give you the truth of who you are? Do you believe them that much? I had one person a while back, because I brought this kind of argument up in the past, right? And talking about this. And then they try to pull up. They said, well, you're pointing to Hebrew books too. You're pointing to Jewish sources too, or whatever. Yes, I am. But see, the difference is I'm going to their words because I want to hear them in their full context as they identify who they are. The difference between you and me is I'm not looking in their stuff to find out who I am. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the difference. I'm not looking in your book to find out who I am. I'm looking at your stuff to find out who you is. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you're the best source to find that out. Just to look at your own books. Don't that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not going. You got to be someone. You literally have to be a person without just baseless. That's the only thing I could come up with. If you look at somebody else's book to find out who you are, that's like you going to your friend's house, and you know how back in the day, they don't do that now. Now photos are on the phones now. But back in the day, there was a time you would go to, your friend's house or whatever. And then, in the coffee table, they would have a stack of photo albums, right? And I could still see it to this day. You have the old photo. Let me look at the photo albums. We'd be looking through the photo albums. And so anyway, you at your friend's house looking through the photo albums and y'all laughing, kiki and ha-ha, right? But you're looking at it so you can find out your story. That's crazy, right? No, nobody would do that. No, I'm looking in my friend's photo album so I can understand their story. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because their story is in their books. That's how I find about and understand them. If I want to know my story, I go to my books. I go to my sources. That's who I go to. But the Hebrew construct is based off of, if you want to know who you are, you go to them to find out who you are. Do you understand the craziness in that? Okay, so we're going to read from this book here. I did a video on this a while back, and I'm still trying to find it somewhere. I have it, but and when I do find it, I'll put the link in the description of this video that you're watching now. But the name of this book is called Chosen People, The Rise of American Black Israelite Religions, and it's by Jacob S. Dorman. And if you don't have this book, I would highly recommend for you to get it because it's full of resources that you can certainly look up on your own to verify what the author is saying is accurate or not. And in this book, he actually goes through the history of the Black Hebrew movement here in the United States. And what many people don't realize is that we've spoken about this many, many times on this platform, is that African Americans, Black folks, whatever your terminology that you want to use, did not see themselves as the actual Israelites. Not until you get into the late 1800s to the early 1900s. Now, we did pull from inspiration. We would compare ourselves. There's plenty of resources that show that we would compare ourselves to the Israelites in the Bible, but we did not come to the complete conclusion to say that we are in fact, the Israelites. You don't see that at all. There is no record of that at all until you get to, like I said, the late 1800s to the early 1900s, and that's when you begin to see that. And this is what this book captures. So anyway, so we're going to read out of a chapter in this book here. Let me pull that up for you. And it's chapter 5, and it's called I Saw You Disappear with My Own Eyes. So, all right, so we're just going to do a little bit of reading here. So let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Probably not, but you should be able to see it on your screen. Okay. All right, let's go. From the 1930s to the 1970s, a visitor to the Ethiopian Hebrew Commandment Keepers congregation in Harlem on a Saturday morning would have found Rabbi Matthew leading a room of African Americans engaged in Hebrew prayer. The men wearing Jewish prayer shawls and skull caps, the women sitting in a separate section at the rear. At the midpoint of the service, the diminutive bearded rabbi would remove the Torah from its enclosure and lead others around the synagogue as the congregation sang the hymn, "We Are Marching to Zion," a favorite of the Wesleyan camp meeting revival movement of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Let me stop there for a second. This rabbi, by the way, he's a black man. Okay. So I just wanted to plug that in right quick. Okay. Okay. For the most part, these worshipers were not converts to Judaism. So let me stop there. So in the early stages, they did not, when you go back into Harlem, they didn't, fully say that it acknowledged that we're embracing Judaism. It didn't start off necessarily as full-blown Judaism, but you'll see as we continue to read that it eventually ended up there. Okay. All right. So let's continue here. Judaism, nor did they describe themselves as Jews, preferring the term Hebrew or Israelites. And they said by the 1930s, their congregation was the oldest remaining Israelite synagogue in New York, a holdover from the First World War years, and it included former members of Rabbi Ford's congregation. One evening after Friday night services had concluded, Matthew turned to the dozen worshipers in the audience and began speaking on the familiar theme of his magical abilities. Turning to Brother William, Matthew asked for corroboration that he had made himself invisible with a wave of his hand. So this is the foundation. This is the beginning of the Hebrew movement. This is what they were doing. Okay, so let's go. And then the person that he turned to said, "Yes, you did," corroborated Brother William. "I saw you disappear with my own eyes." Immediately, the rest of the worshipers, all women, rose from their seats and shouted ecstatically, "Hallelujah! The Lord loves our teacher. Let us sing Adon Olam." The rabbi roared, "Let us sing so that all our enemies will know that we are the chosen sons and daughters of Jehovah." So you notice here what we got laid out here. They described that it was majority women. When you look at the Hebrew construct today, the landscape, what do you see? A majority of women. It's the same, so the makeup is the same. Another thing I want to point out too is let us sing Adon Olam. Adon Olam is basically a Hebrew word, and that comes straight out of Judaism. It ties into, I believe it ties into that, that hand symbol that, Spock, does. That's what is tied to that. And so even though they weren't on the front saying that they're embracing Judaism, many of their practices at that time was in fact coming straight out of Judaism. All right. So, and here you'll see a picture of them, all you got to do, if you painted their faces white, I mean, it will look no different than any other synagogue that you will come across, in any city or town, around all over the world. All right, so let's go here. Let's go to the next page here. Synagogues. They said the New York Historical Society. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Rabbi Matthew's Commandment Keepers, Church of the Living God, the pillar and ground of truth, and the faith of Jesus Christ. That's a long word description, name of a church, but that's what the name was. Began as a Christian church in 1919 and progressively incorporated more Jewish rituals. See, here we go. And decreased the prominence of Jesus as decades passed. There were many sects of black Jews during the 1920s in a range of American cities, and many of these had more members than Matthew's Ethiopian Hebrews or gained more wealth and notoriety. But like Rabbi Ford, Matthew practiced a religion that was not only black Israelite, but was explicitly Jewish. He practiced descent from the ancient Israelites. See, this is where it begins. See, many of you who are listening think you just found out on YouTube and you got a revelation, but that actually stems all the way to this point in history right here. You're looking at how that connection was made. It was made right here. All right. Matthew practiced a religion that was not only black Israelite, but was explicitly Jewish. He practiced descent from the ancient Israelites while incorporating Jewish ritual, Hebrew language, and kosher dietary practices. During the 5 decades Matthew was active, he ordained a dozen or more rabbis, making him the torchbearer for black Judaism in the United States. Yet despite this long career, his movement probably never numbered more than a few thousand followers, at the most, split among a handful of small congregations. Now check this part out here. Black Jews did not simply imitate white Jews. So what were they doing? They were imitating them, but they went even further than that. But rather they were bricolers who constructed a polycultural religion that creatively reworked threads from religious faiths, secret societies, and magical grimoires. This microhistory of the development of Rabbi Matthew's theology reveals how the Jewish ritual that he presented to the world was undergirded by holiness Christianity and magical practices borrowed from esoteric sources such as Freemasonry and spiritualism. Okay, so they pretty much, for the most part at this point, began to just forward on, began to embrace Judaism and all its cousins. Basically, that's what they were embracing here. All right. When one combines the study of Rabbi Matthew's Black Israelism with similar studies of Black Israelism, Black Islam, Rastafarism, Father Divine's Peace Mission movement, and various New Thought-based Black religions operative in the 1920s, it is possible to appreciate a remarkable wave of overlapping esoteric religious creativity that accompanied the much more famous artistic creativity of the Harlem Renaissance. Like other religions of the African diaspora, Black Israelism drew on Caribbean carnival traditions, Pentecostal Christianity, spiritualism, magic, the Kabbalah, Freemasonry, and Judaism in a polycultural creation process dependent not on imitation or inheritance of Judaism as much as innovation, social networks, and imagination. So they were pulling on all of these things here. And not to mention, again, go back here, Kabbalah. Now, we've done many videos talking about, just scratching the surface of Kabbalah and what that is. Kabbalah is part of Judaism. It's more of a Jewish mysticism. And so you'll see this, how just as Judaism has a mysticism branch of it, if you will, what these individuals were doing in Harlem, they were embracing that and all of its, entanglements, if you will, with other esoteric belief systems and all of that. And it became part of the foundation of what we call today, Black Hebrew Israelite or Hebrew Israelite movement of what we see today. All right. You still see signs of this. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and skip forward here. And again, I encourage you to get the book. If you don't have it, please get the book so you can read all of this and keep everything in its full context, because context is key. And that's what we want. We want to make sure we're keeping everything in its full context. So anyway, let's continue. The amount of Judaic ritual in Matthew's church and the importance of Jewishness to his faith rose as a number of white Jews in Harlem declined. In 1923, he celebrated his first Passover. In 1929, his synagogue. Now listen to this part here. Listen to this part. In 1923, he celebrated his first Passover. In 1929, his synagogue was receiving some financial aid from white synagogues. This is the foundation of what Hebrews today, what they believe. It was aided and funded by the very people that many today would say are the fake ones. But yet the foundation was financed by, according to this source here, by white Jews. All right. His synagogues was receiving some financial aid from white synagogues. And in 1930, Bishop Matthew celebrated Rosh Hashanah with 6 Jews of European origin among the 175 congregants. In the same year, the congregation purchased a Torah. What made Bishop and the then Rabbi Matthew's Black Israelism different from many other varieties of Black Israelism that arose in Memphis, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Chicago, Jamaica, South Africa, and even New York in later decades was the fact that Matthew, like Rabbi Ford before him, adopted the ritual forms of Judaism to augment his Israelite identity. The congregation retained a belief in the divinity of Jesus, but began to incorporate elements of Jewish worship, including the use of Jewish prayers such as the Shema,
Shema, Shema, Shema, Shema Yisrael,
and the observance of holidays such as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. A newspaper story from 1929 entitled Negro Sect in Harlem Mixes Jewish and Christian Religions described how Matthew ate kosher meat, wore a skull cap and a prayer shawl, and used some Hebrew. However, the congregation thought of Jesus either as a prophet of the rank of Moses or as divine, and the service itself resembled that of the sanctified church more than that of a Jewish synagogue. So to conclude this, let me see if I had anything else highlighted. Let me see. In the video I did, I talked a lot more. I went into further detail, and there's a lot more. I mean, they very descriptive, and he's pulling from the notes of these leaders of the early stages of this movement. But to conclude, so that we can wrap this part up here, this movement was heavily inspired by white Jews. They copied what they did, and not only copied what they did, but they also blended in esoteric belief systems in other, surrounding them at that time. Harlem was a melting pot, if you will, of all types of belief systems, especially when you had Harlem wasn't just American born blacks, but you also had black folks who were coming from the Caribbean. They were bringing their belief systems as well. So Harlem had all of this, a melting pot of all of this stuff that was happening all at the same time. And when you look at something like, for example, voodoo likewise is the same thing. This is the story of our people. when it comes to spirituality outside of Africa, because we were disconnected from, the motherland. Just like with our food, we had to make do with what was given to us, so we would take the scraps and make it into a world-class meal, and you'll see that example over and over again. Well, same thing in spirituality. I just mentioned voodoo, for example. Voodoo is a hodgepodge of Christianity, Catholic practices, and spirit and African spirituality all blended in together. Well, likewise, when you look at the early history, the foundation of Black Hebrew Israelite movement, you'll find more of the same, and you will see many examples of that even to this day. So for people who are watching or listening to this video right now, and you want to try to disconnect yourself and say, well, that's not me. Well, you may not be practicing these things. However, the foundation, the tree that you're connected to is part of that. That's the roots of it. So that's something you cannot disconnect from if you are one that claims to be part of this group.